cinematic universes. A few years ago, they were all the rage, but they've grown a bit stale lately. However, the impact of them cannot be understated. Disney has made the highest grossing series of all time with the Marvel films, and it seems like every studio now is trying to copy them. Look at their biggest rival, Warner Brothers, as an example. They've been trying to catch up with Disney by using their various properties at their disposal, such as their DC heroes with mixed success, their Hanna-Barbera characters with zero success, and they've even licensed the use of Japanese giant monsters from a studio overseas to make their own interconnected Godzilla films. It's weird to think that these films have reached this almost repetitive point, but it does cause one to wonder, where did this start? Examples such as Alien vs. Predator or the Toho Godzilla series might come to mind, and although wrong, the idea of a cinematic monster universe isn't far off. The true beginning of the concept began during the 1940s with the Universal Studios' classic monsters. Everyone is at least a little familiar with Dracula, the Frankenstein monster, Wolfman, etc., regardless of whether or not they've actually seen any of the films. The iconography alone makes these films appealing. But we generally think of these film characters as separate properties. Where did the idea that they started the first cinematic universe come from? It all started in 1931. The Great Depression was a long way from being finished, and audiences flocked to cinema for escapism. Two landmark films came out that year, both from Universal Studios, Dracula and Frankenstein. Both of these introduced the most iconic versions of these characters. Bela Lugosi as Dracula.
I am Dracula.
And Boris Karloff as the Frankenstein monster. The success of both of these inspired Universal to make more horror films such as The Mummy and The Invisible Man, as well as sequels to Dracula and Frankenstein. A hiatus occurred in 1936 due to censors and lasted until 1939 when Son of Frankenstein rejuvenated interest in horror features. In 1941, Universal added a new monster to its gallery, with the release of The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. The following year, a new Frankenstein installment titled The Ghost of Frankenstein came out. Both of these films were huge hits, and the producers wanted to do more sequels. Enter screenwriter Kurt Siodmak, who jokingly suggested, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. The suggestion wasn't taken half-heartedly, and was unleashed onto the screen in 1943. Early on, Lon Chaney Jr. was tapped to play both the Wolfman and the Frankenstein monster. Logically, this wouldn't have worked out, so instead, Bela Lugosi, best known for Dracula, was tapped to play the part. In a move that would go down in infamy, all of Lugosi's dialogue was cut from the final film, making the actor's performance look awkward. Despite all this drama, the film proved to be a hit. The main highlight being the final scene where the Wolfman and the Frankenstein monster fight, therefore making movie history in the process. Two separate characters coexisting in the same universe. The following year, Universal would put out House of Frankenstein. This film added Dracula to its cast. In earlier drafts of the script, The Mummy was to be included as well, but was eventually cut. Before you get too excited, none of the monsters share any of the same scenes. The year after, in 1945, Universal rehashed the concept with House of Dracula, which, again, the monsters don't share any scenes with one another. It was also the last main installment. World War II had just ended, and the idea of Dracula seemed rather quaint in this post-Hiroshima world. So the monsters were pushed aside. Except, of course, for one more go in 1948's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It brought back the Frankenstein monster, Dracula, and the Wolfman, and they actually share scenes. The Invisible Man even made a cameo at the end. It was the last hurrah for the classic monsters in their classic form. In the years following, Universal has revitalized the monsters time and time again. Infamously, 2017's The Mummy attempted to kickstart a shared monsters cinematic universe to compete with Marvel. Little did Universal probably care to know is that they were really just ripping off themselves. Recently, Universal has been making solo films for the monsters, such as 2020's Invisible Man remake. Will these standalone reboots eventually lead to a new monster cinematic universe? Time will tell. As for the originals, if you're interested in checking them out, you should, but know a few things first. Number 1, they are, as everything is, products of their time. Number 2, the continuity was really loose in all of them. After all, the people who are making these films weren't trying to make a multi-billion-dollar franchise. They were just making one film at a time, as best as they could, provided the decreasing budgets that they were given.